Our session today, we'll look at elasticity. What is elasticity and how is it applied? So elasticity will be combined with some calculus so that you'll be able to do a question that contains a full package. So to start with, a market is simply a system where the buyers and the sellers interact. It needn't be a physical place. It can be a virtual place. So this was discussed last week. So here the sellers and buyers could be represented by individuals, firms, factories, dealers, agents, or even government. So the word market, in essence, entails that a place could be physical or it can be virtual. So the basic features of a market are that number one, it needn't be situated in a particular place or locality. Number two, the buyers and sellers needn't always come to have personal contact. So they can be virtual, like you guys are. I hardly know certain people who come for class. I've never met them, but this is a market arena, which is virtual. So elasticity is going to be important because it defines how we respond to demand, to changes in one of the determinants of demand. So demand has a number of determinants, which we discussed. The determinants of demand include price of that particular good. So it gives us what is called on-price elasticity. Price of a related good, which would be complementary or a substitute. Price or the value of income, which gives us what is called income elasticity. Advertising, which also gives us what we call advertising elasticity. Population, which also gives us what we call population elasticity, and other variables. So specifically, elasticity of demand is defined as a percentage change in the quantity demanded as a result of 1% change in its determinant. So we have the key determinants as price, income, and price of a related good. So we're going to look at what is called price elasticity of demand. So the types of elasticity are as follows. Price elasticity of demand or on-price elasticity. We also have cross-price elasticity. We also have income elasticity of demand. So these are the three elasticities that we are going to look at. So let's start with price elasticity of demand. So price elasticity of demand is simply the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. So we're going to look at a basic calculation. Elasticity will be the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in our price. So Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 divided by P2 minus P1 over P1 times 100. So elasticity of demand will fall in 5 key categories. Number one, if it's greater than 1, we say it is elastic. Of course, we know elasticity of demand always is a negative, but just ignoring the signs, if we have a number which is greater than 1, it simply means that demand is elastic. If we have a number which is exactly 0, we say demand is perfectly inelastic. If we have a number which is exactly 1, we say it is unit elastic. But it's between 0 and 1, we call that inelastic. If it is infinite, a very big number, we call that elastic, perfectly elastic. So this means demand is inelastic, perfectly inelastic. This means demand is perfectly elastic. And here we have demand. It's downsloping at certain points. Maybe point A, it is unit elastic. Point B, it is inelastic. Point C is elastic. So I usually want to use a number line for you to understand this better. So to look at these 3 points here, because demand is on the negative side. So if it's between 0 and -1, we call it as inelastic. If it's exactly at 1, it is unit elastic. If it's less than 1, it is elastic. Are we together? So if we have figures like -0.1, -1.1, -1.0, -1. So this is A, B, C, and D. Our A, what condition is A?
Inelastic.
Anything starting with 0 is inelastic. B, elastic.
Elastic.
C, unit elastic. D, unit elastic. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
All right, so now let's look at an example where we can calculate elasticity of demand. So we have a question below. The price of bread has increased from 4,000 to 6,000, causing demand to fall from 120 to 80. So we're being asked to calculate our elasticity of demand. So now, how do we calculate the elasticity of demand with the information given? Okay, so let's go to our worksheet and use our formula as we navigate. So when we go to our worksheet, the question is pasted here. So we can draw a mini diagram that will help you. So we have price 1 and price 2. We have quantity 1 and quantity 2. So we are told that the price 1 was 4,000. Then it rose to 6,000. Then the quantities, of course, because of the law of demand, when the price goes up, quantities will fall. So initially we were 120, then we go to 80. So elasticity of demand is simply change in quantity over change in price. So we can say Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 divided by P2 minus P1 over P1. So what is our Q2? 80 minus what? 120 over 120 divided by, we have what? P2, which is 6,000 minus 4,000 divided by what? 4,000. Okay. What are you getting when you compute that? What are you getting when you compute that?
So unfortunately, I don't have a calculator right now.
Get negative 0.66. So that's the answer. Get negative 0.66. So what is your comment? Negative 0.66. Demand is what? Is it elastic or inelastic? It is what?
It's inelastic.
It is inelastic, correct. Then what is the interpretation of this figure? So this figure means that if price increases by 1%, the quantity demanded will decrease by 0.66%. That's all. If you're asked to interpret, you simply say a 1% increase in price will result in what? A 0.66% decrease in quantity demanded. That is why demand has an inverse relationship. Whilst one variable is going up, the other variable is going down. Are we together? Is that clear?
Sure, it is.
So, what are the determinants of elasticity of demand? So, elasticity of demand has the following determinants. Number one, there's a number of close substitutes available. So, when you go to a market and you see tomato tandama, just know demand is elastic, very sensitive. If one seller decides to overprice or misbehave, you'll simply switch. There's a lot of switching. The substitution effect is very high. And also the other determinant of elasticity of demand is on the value you place on the consumer's budget. So the value of the commodity placed in the consumer's budget. So if the consumer has a stiff budget, they will value every penny. No wonder you'll see women or those that come from low earning areas will go in the middle of the town, in the middle of the market down, because they place value on them and the purchasing power must be high. So they're very selective, they're very sensitive. For men, more especially, we are elastic. That's why we are so wasteful. We would want to buy even at quick shops anyhow. So this is what other factor that affects elasticity, the importance of the commodity in our budgets. The other one is also the habits of the consumers. They say habits die high. So some of the commodities that are addictives, like tobacco, no matter how much price there is, you cannot do away without tomato or even alcohol. So demand for such is inelastic. To be inelastic is to be insensitive. Whether it changes, you have no option, you buy either way. The other factors are the number of uses that the commodity may have. So if you're looking at a commodity that is multi-purpose, for instance, you are looking at a liquid that you can use to wash your plates and wash clothes, and you're going to buy a liquid that's just generally tailored to just washing plates. You'd rather buy soap since you use it for many other, you even mop. So demand will be elastic towards. And the time factor also is another factor. Elasticity usually vary with the length of time. So with time, certain products become obsolete or out of taste. So the periods also will matter. For instance, when you hear that fuel will be what? Will be going up just at midnight. You see how people even buy in containers for resale. Then others will be queuing up because of the time period. Cross-price elasticity has to do with two goods, X and Y. So we talked about different types of goods. We talked about complements, which are goods which move hand in hand, like the phone and the SIM card. Substitute goods, which compete against each other, like bread and candolo. So when these goods are related, obviously, your pricing, your buying behavior will also be interrelated. For instance, you want to buy a car, you want to know how much fuel there is. Okay, if you want to buy a gas stove, you want to know how much it costs to buy gas. So the decisions are interdependent. And also, you want to buy bread, ShopRite, you want to find out how much is it in the other competitor, Pick and Pay. So if goods are related, we have what we call cross-price elasticity, which is defined as the responsiveness for demand for good X as a result of changes in price for good Y. Are we following together?
Yes, sir.
So the formula is simply percentage change in quantity demanded for good X over percentage change in price for good Y. So it's given Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 of X divided by P2 minus P1 over P1 of Y. So whenever we get a positive answer, it means we have substitutes in place. Whenever we get a negative, it means that those are complements in place. All right. So this is what happens with our cross-price elasticity. We also have what we call income elasticity of demand. Income elasticity of demand has what is called the income effect. Economists use the letter Y to represent income. Other books use M, other books use I. All these stand for what? Income. So it's given by the percentage change in quantity demanded of good X over percentage change of the money income. So it is given by Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 times 100 divided by Q2, Y2 minus Y1 over Y1 times 100. So this is how we calculate. So for the cross price, we said there are only two things. If you're on the negative side, this is the complementary good. If you're on the positive side, this is a substitute good. For income, there are two things. If you're on the negative side, it's called an inferior good. If you're on the positive side, it is called a normal good. That's all. Of course, on the normal side, if it's more than one, it's a luxury. If it's less than one, it's a necessity. So when we have greater than one, it is elastic, meaning this is a luxurious good. If it is exactly one, it is unitary. Between 0 and 1 is inelastic. Inelastic really applies for necessities. So we hear that enemy has what gone up, but we're still buying. So being inelastic, ideally in my own language, would be being indifferent. So income elasticity of demand for essential goods is positive. Means when your income rises, you demand more of those essential goods. But for inferior goods, if your income rises, you demand less of them. Examples of inferior goods are second-hand clothes, black and white TV, or inferior cars. Okay. Sometimes, Bianca, ladies want to make guys inferior goods. When you find a man who's working, person who you found earlier becomes an inferior good. That's what is happening today. Now, I'm going to use a multilinear function to calculate the elasticity. So we can calculate elasticity using a multilinear function. So let's look at firstly the relationships of elasticity and the total revenue. So when you're looking at the relationship between the price elasticity of demand and the total revenue, it is important to know these two as we will be setting the prices for a commodity. So producers will always want to be informed about the price elasticity of demand before they are willing to increase the price. So they want to know if the increase will result into consumers increasing the total amount that will be paid for the product. For instance, between ShopRite and Pick n Pay, if they want to increase the price of bread, they'll need to know how the market is. Especially January is very elastic, very sensitive. So they'll need to look at the market. So if an increase by 1/4 will cause a switch and you lose demand, then it is not worth increasing. So it is also important, on the other hand, to understand elasticity for suppliers, because even a decline by 1/4 will call for a lot of demand. For instance, you've seen how they play with prices, 2/4 99, and in going to that shop, the same price is 3/4. You would think 2/4 is cheaper. So if the demand for a product is elastic, the price of elasticity of demand exceeds 1. If it is inelastic, it means the price elasticity of demand is below 1. So if the price is reduced when the situation is elastic, it means the percentage increase in the quantity demanded is greater than the reduction of the price. So what you need to understand in terms of elasticity and revenue, if you increase your price by a certain margin and your demand goes down by a smaller margin than you increased it, then it means demand is not elastic, it's inelastic. But if the margin percentage of a price increase is less or is exceeded by the margin percentage decline in quantity demanded, no, demand is inelastic. However, if your price increase is equal to the price decrease percentage, then we are in a unit elastic. So the application of elasticity, number one, occurs on how we determine the prices. So if goods have an elastic demand, it is recommended that you reduce the prices because people will not buy. If goods have an inelastic demand, that is when you can maximize on increasing the prices. For instance, we don't know the price of razor blades. If you find that 1/4, you find that 10/4, 5/4, still buy because it's not a daily consumable. When we're dealing with our total revenue, which is given by price times quantity. So if we are faced with an elastic demand, so the recommended policy that you need to use is to base the tax on the sales volume. Okay, you tax based on the sales volume. But if the demand is inelastic, you base the tax on the price. Now, how government raises revenue through taxes. So when government is faced with an elastic demand also, people don't have money. That is why government will reduce on the taxes. But if the demand in the country generally is inelastic, for instance, on beer, people will still buy. That is where they should dedicate their taxes. Now, how does government also regard the application of tax elasticity with regards to investment? So when we have an elastic supply, for instance, in the transport sector, government will give little or no involvement in that sector because there is an elastic supply. So where the goods are in inelastic supply, government will be involved. And lastly, when government is dealing with wages for labor, so where there is unskilled labor, but there is elastic supply, government will look at low wages. That's a policy. There's unskilled labor, but there's a sensitive supply, low wages. Where there is high good level with elastic supply. For instance, where the doctors to look at a high wages policy. So this is where the application of elasticity comes in. Now we'll look at this multilinear equation. So elasticity can be calculated using the following. For instance, we have 10 minus 2 price of X plus 3 price of Y plus 10 M, where we are told that the price of good X is 1 kwacha, price of good Y is 2 kwacha, and the income is 5 kwacha. So what is the total sales, or what is our Q? We simply substitute where there is our variables. So where there's Px, we're going to put 1. Where there's Py, we're going to put 2. Where there's M, we're going to put 5. So in this case, we're going to have 10 minus 2 plus 6 plus 50. So this is going to give us 10 plus 50, 60. 60 plus 4, 54, 64. So this is our total Q. Now to find own price elasticity, X against X, we're just simply going to use this formula. Our B, which is a gradient, the price of X over good X. So in this case, where we have our gradient, our B for good X, it is -2. Then the price for good X is 1 times 1. And our Q, just calculated it, is what? 64. So we compute it. So elasticity of demand, by the way, must always be negative, regardless, because we know it has an inverse relationship. So this is 0.3125. So here, what is our comment? Demand is inelastic. All right. Then we go XY. Same formula, but here we have good Y against good X. So it's crossing from one good to another. So what is the gradient for good Y? +3. What is the price for good Y? 2. Okay. So here we have 6 divided by 64. 6 divided by 64, we get a positive 0. What? 0.09. So we said for cross price elasticity, our key thought there is on the sign. If the sign is positive, we call that a substitute good. If the sign is negative, we call that a complementary good. And finally, the elasticity of income. So the slope for income there is what? 10. So these are the slopes. The B for X, price of X is -2. The B for price of Y is +3. Here it is +10. Okay, then the actual income here is what? 55. It's 5 then over 64. So 10 plus 5 is 50. 50 over 64. We get 0.78. So when we have a positive income elasticity, we always know that this is a normal good. This is a normal good. So we go to this exam type question. We're given our price elasticity of demand for shoes given by this equation, where the price of good X, price of good Y, and the income are given as follows. X is 25, price of good Y is 35, advertising is 50, and income is 20,000. So what do we do? Where there is a price of X, we put what? 25. Where there is price of Y, we put 35. Where there is income, put 20,000. And where there is advertising, we put 50. So you substitute all this in here, and the total you're going to get will be 65. Then how do we find the price on price elasticity of demand? It's good X against X. Now, I'll give you a hint before we go any further. When you're seeing these two goods, X and Y, you're able to tell whether they're substitute goods or complementary goods. So the signs are different here, meaning they're opposing each other, they're substitute goods. If the signs are the same, negative and negative, we know that these are complementing each other. Needless to say, we know that if cross price elasticity is a positive, it gives you an indication that this is a substitute good. Are we following? Are we moving together?
Yes, yes.
All right. So we now go to the computations. So these computations we have so here for on price it will be 3 out of what? 3 times 25 divided by 65, the total. Then for cross price it will be 4 times 35 divided by 65. For income to be negative 0.1 times 20,000 divided by 65. So these are the computations. 3 times 25 over 65, it is negative 1.1. So comment here, what is it? Is it elastic or inelastic?
It's elastic.
It's elastic, correct. Then for the cross price elasticity, 4 times 35 over 65, it will be 2.15. Here, don't comment whether it's elastic or inelastic. Since it's cross price, our comment should be whether it's a substitute or to be a complementary good. So we have a positive there. Is this a substitute or it's a complementary good?
It's a substitute.
Yes, a substitute because positive. Then for income, we also comment depending on the sign if it's a negative or it's a positive. So in this case, we have a negative. What does this mean on the income elasticity?
It's an inferior good.
So it's an inferior good. Excellent. So this is how you're supposed to tackle this question. And I'll leave you with this exercise to try. Is that okay? So
Okay, we'll send the solutions.
okay, so end here for now. Have a good day.